Welcome to Inside Scoop Live. Hi, I'm Irene Watson. I'm your host for today. Well, I'm delighted to be speaking today with Lateef Warnick. He is the author of Journey of the Soul, Day 1. This is the first of the 7-book series, which essentially expounds on the premise that the kingdom of God is within you. Today we're going to be talking with Lateef about many aspects of finding that kingdom within you and how to overcome those apparent inner conflicts that we often have. But first, a little bit about Lateef. Lateef Terrell Warnick has been interested in spirituality and religion since a child. Aside from having been a licensed financial advisor, naval officer, student pilot, math and science teacher, and nuclear engineer, Lateef has a bachelor's degree in political science and extensive studies in religious comparisons, metaphysics, Eastern teachings, Santana Dharma, and yoga. Lateef is also an entrepreneur and founder of One Soul. It's one SOUL, which is an acronym for One Source of Universal Love and consists of spiritual movement and worldwide social network. Hi, Lateef.
Hello, Irene.
Well, I'm sure glad to be talking to you. This is one of my favorite topics, and it always pleases me when I can talk to an author on one of my favorite subjects. I think before we just really go into what your book is about and kind of bringing out some of the topics that your book pertains to, I want to know what your viewpoint or what your explanation is and the difference between spirituality and religion.
Great question, Irene. And that is a very important one because I come across that quite a bit. If we go back to religions, they were established and created with the ideal of trying to connect the typical average person with spirit. So the premise of a religion is to be spiritual. However, over time, I feel like a lot of religions have lost that ability to, guide individuals on how to connect with that spirit. So, ironically, I guess you can say that a lot of religions have kind of lost their spirituality. Spirituality, from my perspective, is something that is universal. This is something that God places in place as far as laws on how individual souls will always be able to connect with a higher spirit, meaning that we are all one. Religions, unfortunately, take on the, I guess, lack of better words, personification of dogma, which tends to separate and divide individuals. So anytime I believe a religion is, promoting a teaching that is exclusive to only the individuals that follow that religion, then it becomes more, again, dogmatic in nature and less spiritual.
And it's always, to me, what it feels like is it's man-made.
Correct, exactly. Most religions, I do believe, are definitely man-made and therefore, imperfect and temporary. Spirituality, I believe, is, again, universal and eternal. These are truths that God makes and puts in place, and they therefore are unchanging and permanent.
I've talked to a number of people on this topic, and it seems that sometimes some people just cannot distinguish the difference between spirituality and religion and really lump it into one. So I really do like your explanation. And it's almost like more of a metaphysical type of a viewpoint of what spirituality really is.
Absolutely.
And so your interest in metaphysics, when did this start? I'm always curious because you metaphysical people have such neat stories. There's always some kind of a starting point.
Great question. And it's funny because my wife always laughs about my answer to this question.
Oh.
but in truth, this is something I've pretty much always been involved with. So for me to tell this, answer that question, it really has to go back to my mother. My mother was one of, I believe, 12, 13 siblings, and she's the middle child, the seventh child. So when she was young, she began going to church on her own. A couple weeks later, her father, my grandfather, asked her, and her name is Fran. He called her Franny. He said, Franny, if you go to church next Sunday, let me know. And so when she got up to go, he went with her, and when he liked it, he made up his mind that, okay, now that I'm going, everyone's going to go. So he would get up all 13 children. They would all go to church together. over many years, my mother actually became the first one to become very dissatisfied with the church as well from some of the things she seen and was exposed to. So she began reading a lot more New Age and metaphysics type teaching. So I actually have one older brother. We come from a much smaller family, so it's just my brother and I, and then my two parents. And so as children, we used to do a lot of road trips. My grandparents were originally from Miami, Florida. My parents were both pretty much raised in New York, so we used to do a lot of back and forth between those two distances. So we spent a lot of time in just the car, talking about books and different readings and teachings just from all over the world. And that was really kind of our spiritual upbringing. So I came to this understanding at a very young age.
And this is great that you had somebody to teach you that had actually the same beliefs that worked for you. Because obviously somebody's deep inside that there was that yearning, and it's like, yeah, this works for me, whereas dogmatic religion wasn't going to work for you.
Absolutely. And I believe that we are all somehow karmically attracted to the right families for certain reasons based on where we may already be spiritually speaking. So for me, it's something I guess I was always into and made sense to me at a very young age.
Mm-hmm. Lateef, it seems to me, too, that some people turn to religion for specific reasons and others to spirituality for specific reasons. And it's quite often, a lot of times, that people are at some bottom of some sorts in their life. And I know that you do work with a lot with people that are in that situation. And I'd just like to address that. And, you're more on the spirituality end of it. And what type of people is it that find that spirituality or seek it?
Great question. From what I've seen, and it's kind of been my experience here, I guess we start with the basics here. Most people experience happiness on one of two levels. We all have desires, and when we desire something, if that desire is fulfilled, then we typically feel some degree of happiness or joy. Likewise, when certain things we desire are not fulfilled, then we tend to feel, disappointment or frustration. And likewise, the reverse is true as well. If something happens to us that we didn't want to happen, and obviously that can bring some frustration. And likewise, the opposite of not getting something. But people's answers or responses to that are obviously going to be very individual and unique. What I do believe is universal in that is that these moments or these peaks and valleys, we can call them, are really designed to inspire some degree of self-awakening, for us to kind of look within ourselves, begin some sort of self-reflecting, and seek more of a spiritual answer. Mm-hmm. In truth, everything we experience in creation and in life is really spiritual in nature. Everything that we interact with and deal with really has a spiritual counterpart, so to speak. Those that choose to, I guess, go more down the religious path, simply because I think that that's more available. Mm-hmm. You can basically go on the Yellow Pages or, look on the Internet, and you can find a local church, and it's just always easier to find someone else to kind of provide answers and solutions for us. And that's why I think a lot of religions tend to thrive, because people are seeking and wanting something more. They just don't know where to turn to get it.
And you just said something really important before we go on, that they want that fix. They want somebody else to do it rather than in spirituality, is what you're talking about. They are going inside within themselves and seeking that answer rather than going to the outside to seek the answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, if you go back to most of the spiritual figures in which most religions are founded upon, whether it's Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, or so forth, the reason why religions were able to be born from these spiritual figures is because they actually had the personal relationship. They had the direct experience that was very unique and made them stand out amongst the crowd. The religion's attempt is to try to pass that along. Mm-hmm. How do I develop and nurture what this spiritual master may have achieved for themselves? And that's where the problem, I guess, becomes, where it's sort of lost in translation of the whole point of this religious teaching is to try and guide one to find the answer within side note, and that's kind of what I try to do with my book, is a lot of my teaching about esoteric in nature, which esoteric in my sense of the word means that knowledge of something that comes from within. If you look in the modern-day dictionary, a lot of times you see the definition of, a knowledge that is only known to a small group versus exoteric, which is known to the masses. But that is more of a transformational definition of the words. Originally, it just means something that came from within, and exoteric meant that which came from without or through the senses. So again, we as individual souls are spiritual in nature, and ultimately, when you're looking for permanent solutions or answers to whatever challenge you may be facing in life, the truest answers will always be found in the spirit, and that can only be found from within each individual, because my path obviously is going to be very different from Irene's path. So Irene can't give me answers to how to fix my life.
But I might want to try.
Exactly, and you can only share with me what you experience yourself.
Exactly.
And that's what I think a lot of times, again, religions are good in intent, but again, a lot of times people use them to provide, short-term, temporary solutions or satisfaction.